shall detonate the reality bomb!
I will build a great, great wall.
Some alien race to come down and threaten us.
Is the singularity near?
The truth is out there.
The military-industrial complex.
The 7 mountains of the influencers of culture.
To be as gods, you know.
Change has come to America.
Catapult of propaganda.
From a secure location on top of the ridge in the heart of the beautiful Missouri Ozarks, this is A View from the Bunker. Now, here's Derek Gilbert.
Well, thanks to daylight savings time, we can't hear the coyotes out there. They like to wait until after dark. But we do hear the cattle outside, and the dachshund is snoring. So that means it's time for A View from the Bunker Live. Welcome. This week, we talk about terror in New Zealand and how we as Christians should respond. Muslim students go off script. Israel hits back at Hamas. Beto's band Dan, we talk about sin and spirits in Thailand, and our new robot overlords may already be here. Some people, are they just human weeds? We discuss with documentary filmmaker Robert Blaise, and we'll get an update on the Hear the Watchmen conference. It's just 2 weeks away in Dallas. Welcome. This is A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. Today, March 17th, 2019, St. Patrick's Day. If you're of the Irish persuasion, we salute you. Of course, the real St. Patrick, the historic St. Patrick, the 5th century Briton, he was not Irish, he was British, more like my Welsh ancestors, would be appalled at how most of us here in the West have chosen to celebrate the day named in his honor, but that is a different story. Anyway, much to discuss this week, so we thank you for letting us inside your ears, whether it's at Spreaker.com, iHeartRadio, Stitcher.com, Spotify.com. Yes, A View from the Bunker is all of those places, as well, of course, as the website, vftb.net. That's the acronym, View from the Bunker. If you're listening live, welcome to the chat room at Spreaker.com. If you're subscribing to the podcast and listening to the archives, well, if you've not subscribed to the podcast, you really should, because it makes listening to the archives much easier. You can do that at Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or subscribe with your account at Stitcher, iHeartRadio, or Spotify. And we got links to all them places at vftb.net to make it really easy. Of course, the easiest way is to simply download the free mobile app, which is good for iOS devices or Android devices. So we can send these programs straight to you, bypassing the gatekeepers of social media. And we've got links to the iTunes App Store and Google Play at vftb.net. Of course, we post the audio also to YouTube, at least as long as they'll let us. YouTube.com/Derek Gilbert, my channel there. And on social media, you'll find us at Facebook.com/ViewFromTheBunker. On Twitter, it's at ViewFromBunker or at Derek Gilbert. I answer to both. And you'll find me at oneway.com, new social media site, oneway.com, run by Derek. That is his real name, and he spells it correctly, too. My handle at oneway.com, at Derek P. Gilbert. Well, since we last met, horror overnight Thursday into Friday, where a white nationalist, and I hesitate to use that term because it's awfully broad, but a white man who is a nationalist, let's put it that way, an Aussie in New Zealand, shot dead nearly 50 people at a couple of mosques in New Zealand. To make the horror more immediate and more real, he chose to live stream it to social media, which is causing Facebook some grief now because they facilitate things like this. They don't allow it. It's not like Facebook went online anticipating that somebody would live stream mass murder or torture or rape and other things that have made it onto Facebook before the humans there at Facebook decided to drop, the hammer on those things and pull them offline. Something upwards of 1 million shares of this horror video shot in real time as the killer, the murderer, went through the mosque shooting people who were begging for their lives. What's especially disturbing is that it looks an awful lot like first-person shooter video games that are available for our kids to play. What's worse, of course, is that people found it worth sharing. And so over 1 million copies of this had to be pulled off of Facebook servers in the hours that followed these shootings. There's no question, this is horrific. Absolutely, absolutely evil. There is no other word for it. And only slightly less evil is that it took only hours for people to start making this a political football. Academics trying to prove how smart they are and how superior they are compared to those of us unwashed, ignorant masses who voted for Donald Trump in the 2018 election. 2016 election. What am I talking about? 2016 election. Wasted no time going to social media to condemn Donald Trump and his rhetoric and to lay the blame for these 4 murders at Donald Trump's doorstep. Lawrence Tribe of Harvard University. The mass murderer's manifesto invoked Trump as his hero. Trump is knowingly inspiring racial hatred and violence, and he has begun linking such talk to what'll happen if we dare to remove or replace him. David Rogers of Kingston University. President Trump, your condolences sound very hollow when they come after you encouraged and condone violence by your supporters, whose beliefs are similar to those expressed by one of the terrorists who also cited you as an influence. Look, because the guy cited Donald Trump does not make Donald Trump complicit in what happened here. And what's disturbing is that people as intelligent as Professor Rogers believe the progressive media's characterization of Donald Trump as a racist, as somebody who supported and endorsed and called the protesters, the white nationalists who protested at Charlottesville, Virginia a couple of years ago, very fine people. This was repeated a number of times by CNN. Even though when you go back and actually look at the archive of what the president said after the Charlottesville tragedy, where a man ran over a number of people, killing one with a vehicle, the president did not call them very fine people. In fact, he condemned the violence. But that's not what people remember because that's not what the media is reporting. And then people who should know better, like these university professors, repeat this. Art instructor Adrienne D'Angelo of St. John's University, quote, "The white terrorist of the New Zealand mosque attacks acted out of support for you," directing this at Donald Trump. "Because you symbolize white identity and common purpose. Resign. You're incapable of anything but decisiveness, inhuman and heartless. Jews, Muslims, women, blacks, Latinos, we all #resist. Well, it goes on. There are many other examples of this. These are just the first 3 that I stumbled across. Of course, this attitude, this view is quite frankly insane. It is quite frankly there is no rational basis to equate a desire for law and order inside the borders of our nation with racism. And yet they do. Actually, this is obscene because, as I said, this is using the blood of 49 victims of an evil mass murder for a political point, to make a political point. Now, Dr. Michael Brown wrote a really good piece on this, and I will read excerpts of it because he, I think, addressed it very well, how we as Christians should respond. And again, he makes a point that, and Michael Brown is a graduate of New York University, and we'll talk about NYU a little bit more here in just a second. Very intelligent man. He's the nationally syndicated host of the radio program Line of Fire, written more than 24 books. Far more intelligent than me. And he points out that as Christians, our response is, first of all, to condemn this act as evil, regardless of what race or color you and I happen to be as followers of Jesus Christ. This was evil. There is no other way to describe it. The people who died were not military combatants, and I'm quoting now from his article. They were not terrorists, but they were Muslims. They were foreigners. Therefore, reason their killer, they must be eliminated. And from what we understand, the shooter was a right-wing extremist, a white supremacist. But this is where we must not overreact. This was not the crime of all white people. This was not the crime of conservatives in general. This was not the crime of Donald Trump or his supporters. This was the crime of a sick, demented, evil individual, a man who apparently felt solidarity with others of like mind. But he is not a part of a worldwide, organized, anti-Muslim, anti-immigrant conspiracy. Put another way, if a conservative American thinks we need better border security, that does not make him a partner in this heinous act. Or if a conservative Swede thinks that Muslims need to become more incorporated into the larger society, that does not mean he wishes for their death or, God forbid, would try to kill them. My point, writes Dr. Brown, is that our response must be reasonable. We unequivocally condemn this evil act, and we unequivocally condemn the ideology behind it. There is no possible justification or rationale or excuse that can support this despicable massacre. End of subject. But then he concludes with the point that I'm trying to make, and he does it much better and more succinctly. Quote, but let's not use the blood of these Muslims to score political points. That is, quite frankly, obscene. Indeed. Now, I will add this, and this is where we bring NYU back into the conversation. It was interesting that at a vigil held Friday night, Chelsea Clinton, the former first daughter, attended this vigil to show solidarity with Muslims who were mourning the deaths of the 49 people slaughtered in New Zealand. But at the vigil, she was confronted by several students from New York University. Video was recorded, as happens anytime somebody runs into somebody famous anymore, and it, of course, went viral. And the student blamed Chelsea Clinton for the violence in New Zealand. Now, of course, progressives are having trouble getting their heads around this one because they're all supposed to be on the same side. As we saw in that, social media post from the art instructor from St. John's, people of color, women, Muslims are supposed to hashtag resist, all on the same side. And yet, because Chelsea Clinton criticized Representative Ilhan Omar, the Somali Muslim woman representing Minnesota in Congress, for her anti-Semitic comments, the Muslim students accused Clinton of stoking the hatred behind the New Zealand mosque shootings. The student told Clinton, this right here is the result of a massacre stoked by people like you and the words you put out. I want you to know that, and I want you to feel that deep inside. And then later, the young lady who confronted Chelsea Clinton tweeted, I can't believe this has to be said, but I didn't tell Chelsea Clinton she was the one who put a gun to Muslims' heads. Again, it's hard to get one's mind around this. The people on all sides of the political divide here jumped in to defend Chelsea Clinton. But this is the kind of confrontation where you have to take out your politically correct hierarchy victim handbook to see who has victimhood priority in a confrontation like this. It's really, really strange, the world in which we're living today. And it's only going to get stranger. Well, speaking of the anti-Semitic remarks and the confrontation, the ongoing conflict between Muslims, Christians, and Jews, we saw a surprise, really, Thursday into Friday, an attack from Gaza on Tel Aviv. Rockets launched toward Tel Aviv on Friday. But here's the odd thing. This attack was compared by Israeli media to something out of a Monty Python sketch. It appears that this launch was unintentional. At least that's what Hamas says. And there's some reason to believe that this is true. Now, Israel struck back pretty quickly, hit more than 100 targets in the Gaza Strip after these two rockets were launched to Tel Aviv. This is the first time Tel Aviv was targeted in more than a decade, I believe. It's been a while. I mean, that's serious business because you're shooting at Tel Aviv, you're shooting at heavily populated civilian area, really the economic capital of Israel. And it's coming at a really awkward time because we're just a few weeks away now from elections in Israel. April 9th, elections in Israel as Prime Minister Netanyahu is trying to hang on to his coalition. Well, the Prime Minister is trying to avoid his fourth war in the Gaza Strip in the last 10 years, but stuff like this could trigger it in a real hurry. But the timing was really weird because as those rockets launched from Gaza, representatives of Hamas were meeting with a delegation from Egypt. And the Egyptian delegation was furious. According to a report from Channel 13 in Israel and the Jerusalem Post, the rockets were launched during a routine maintenance operation. Word got to the Palestinians and the Egyptians at this meeting, and the Egyptian representative said, quote, "You're meeting with us at the same time you're firing on Tel Aviv?" They were not pleased. So the leader of Hamas, Yahya Sinwar, had to check out what had happened, and he said, we feel sick about it, but it wasn't supposed to happen. Okay, then. Well, again, Israeli warplanes hit about 100 targets in the Gaza Strip between Thursday night and Friday. But the Egyptians called Jerusalem, called the prime minister, and said, look, this was a mistake. And the IDF told Israeli press, or Israeli journalists, the Times of Israel, that they considered this to be an accidental launch. And Channel 13 in Israel said this farcical chain of events that almost led to war was like something out of Monty Python. The first rocket launch at Tel Aviv in 5 years, since 2014. Well, praise God that cooler heads prevailed because, you know, we have friends in Tel Aviv, one of whom we'll see in just a couple of weeks. Messianic Rabbi Zev Parat, his wife Lynn. They'll be flying in to join us in Dallas for this the Watchmen conference, and we'll talk to Mike Kerr in our final segment tonight. But thankfully, nobody hurt. But of course, when the rockets are falling and you hear the explosions and see the sky lighting up and you don't know what's going on, it can be a little nerve-wracking, understandably. And just imagine, but by the way, reportedly a low-level Hamas officer was taken into custody by Hamas afterwards for almost starting a war. Beto O'Rourke, one of the newest Democrats to jump into the presidential race. There are something like, I think, 57 candidates running right now. Not really, but it just seems that way. And the media is really in love with Beto O'Rourke. I mean, really, really in love with Beto O'Rourke. I mean, they really, really love Beto O'Rourke. We saw this during the 2018 election where he ran against Senator Ted Cruz in Texas, tried to win his seat, brought in all kinds of money, set records for fundraising in Texas. Most of the money came from out of state, which might have backfired a bit because I know how Missourians would feel with word that out-of-state money was trying to sway a local election. Texans probably even a little more, resistant to that kind of idea. Anyway, Beto is the subject of a lot of puff pieces in the media here lately. Vanity Fair ran one this week. Seemed like the story was more about his sad-looking Labrador Retriever in the picture taken by Annie Leibovitz. Annie Leibovitz, a really gifted photographer. She can make anybody look good. But Beto's got kind of that Kennedy family smile, which is really all anybody knows about him, for the most part. I mean, why he's considered a serious candidate for president after serving in Congress and then losing his election to Ted Cruz, who even Republicans admit is not really an extremely likable guy. is kind of surprising. And Beto has said some really weird things, which probably cost him the election. Just way too liberal for Texas. Anyway, Reuters published a piece yesterday which came out, and again, this illustrates why the American public does not trust the major media anymore. And they're writing it like this is a really cool thing. I mean, Beto is cool because he played in a punk rock band and he skateboards. Yeah, he's 47 years old, but he still skateboards. He's totally awesome. The piece opens this way. Some things you might not know about Beto O'Rourke, the former Texas congressman who just entered the race for president. The Democratic contender raised a record amount for a U.S. Senate race in 2018 and almost beat the incumbent in a Republican stronghold without hiding his support for gun control and Black Lives Matter protest on the football field. If he had, he might have won, actually. When he was younger, he was arrested on drunk driving charges and played in a punk band. And now 46, he still skateboards. The charismatic politician with the Kennedy smile is liberal on some issues and libertarian on others, which could allow him to cross the country's political divide. One thing you didn't know, while a teenager, O'Rourke acknowledged in an exclusive interview he belonged to the oldest group of computer hackers in U.S. history. But here's the thing. This group is called the Cult of the Dead Cow, named after an abandoned slaughterhouse in Texas. And it's been very influential. They've released hacking tools to the internet that allow people who don't know anything about hacking, like me, to hack other people's computers. Kind of a nuisance. We would call that vandalism back in the day. So his membership in this group, because the activity of computer hackers, rather than being, cool, is actually kind of illegal, was kept secret by the Cult of the Dead Cow. A reporter for Reuters that is, decided to dig into it because it had been rumored and whispered about that a prominent congressman had once been a member of this group. Well, he figured out who it was and interviewed a number of members of this group and even interviewed Beto himself. But here's the thing. He interviewed Beto long before the 2018 election, back in 2017. Beto agreed to speak to the reporter and confirm his membership in this computer hacking group if Reuters agreed to sit on the story until after the 2018 election. Now, think about that for a minute. Would Reuters have sat on that story if something like this, and the reason I bring this up is because some of the stuff that came out about Beto's membership in this group is really kind of embarrassing. Stuff that he did when he was a teenager, but as we saw in the Brett Kavanaugh hearings for confirmation to the Supreme Court, stuff you do in high school when you're 15, 16 years old is no longer off limits when you're running for a political office or some form of government post, especially if you're a conservative. But this stuff that he wrote, which is, I guess, allegedly poetry, I'm not going to read tonight because, frankly, it's gross, disgusting, obscene, and sexually explicit. Reuters had this in its possession long before the 2018 election. It's the kind of thing that might have made some people look at him and say, now, why in the world, or for example, even as a 15-year-old, would you write a fantasy story about how much you would enjoy running over small children with your car? That was one of the short stories that he wrote that was, I guess, published on a message board run by this Cult of the Dead Cow. And some of the other poetry is just so, again, sexually explicit and bizarre that would have made great fodder for social media. And if you're on social media this weekend, you probably have seen some of these phrases pop up already connected to Beto O'Rourke. Anyway, the point is, Reuters knew about this, held on to it for 18 months until now it's coming out 6 months after the election. Would they have done this for a conservative candidate? I'll leave that to you to answer. Well, by the way, this may be why, as I said, average Americans no longer trust the major media. Here's another reason why. another example of why that is. Michael Steele, who's the former MI6 agent, intelligence agent from the British government, who put together the dossier that was used by the FBI to get the FISA court to issue warrants allowing them to spy on members of the Donald Trump presidential campaign. Steele admits that he used posts from CNN's iReport website, the iReport website, as source information for his dossier. Now, the iReport website is intended to encourage submissions from citizen journalists. Now, in the internet era, it's a way for them to get video that they wouldn't have a film crew to a scene in time to collect for themselves. Somebody who's on the scene with a video phone at a fire or at a tornado can submit it to CNN, and CNN will run it. But the thing is, they don't vet the information, so people can post articles there that are essentially opinion pieces, and CNN doesn't vet it. Well, that's the kind of information that Michael Steele, this intelligence officer, who was being paid by an opposition research company, which in turn was being paid by the Democratic National Committee, the Clinton campaign. That's what he used to compile the dossier that was turned over to the FBI by John McCain. And of course, CNN is still referring to the dossier and the information in it as though there's some validity to it. And as a result, CNN's current ratings are so bad that no program on CNN rates higher than 28th in all cable news programming. That's not 28th in cable, but 28th in cable news. Anderson Cooper, who runs their flagship evening program, AC 360 or whatever they call it, has just over 1 million viewers. There are some YouTube videos put out there, just absolutely stupid stuff that get more views than that. So that's what happens when you go from being the most trusted name in news to being essentially opposition research. American people, it was like, look, we would like to hear some news, get some news, but can't seem to find it on the news anymore because the programs that call themselves news, like CNN, are just spinning talking points, Democratic talking points. And one final note before we go to our interview segment tonight. An annual festival that we talk about, Sharon and I have talked about before in past programs, both on, I think we've done it on PID Radio, which is our kind of dormant podcast, PIDradio.com. I don't think we've done a program for almost a year now. This is an annual thing in Thailand where people will come together at a place about 50 miles west of Bangkok, a sacred tattoo festival at the Wat Bang Phra Temple, where people will get tattoos that they believe will impart to them the spirits of animals, that they will essentially be possessed by the spirits of various animals. The symbols can be astrological signs, wild animals, inscriptions in various languages, Sanskrit, Pali. And then after the tattoo, participants work themselves into trances to resemble wild animals, and then they charge toward a Buddha statue on the stage. Essentially, they allow themselves, encourage spirits to possess them. And as they charge the stage, volunteers will block them and then pinch their ears because they believe that releases the spirit. Well, I'm sorry, demon possession and exorcism doesn't work that way. Pinch the ears to release the spirit. If only exorcism was that easy. The problem is the folks in Thailand, the people participating in this, don't realize exactly what they're doing. Pray for them and pray for the missionaries working in those foreign fields, bringing the gospel to the ends of the earth. Because this is the kind of thing the enemy uses to keep people in thrall. We're in the middle of a war, whether we realize it or not, and it's being fought outside of human sight. We can't see the enemy. but we can see the result of their handiwork all around us. And that leads us to our guest tonight. Coming up, are some people more deserving of life than others? That's a question that we thought had been answered when Adolf Hitler and the Nazis were defeated in World War II, but not so much. Filmmaker Robert Blaise joins us to talk about his documentary Human Weeds as A View from the Bunker continues. I'm Derek Gilbert.
Does God use catastrophe to mobilize His people for His glory? Is there finally definitive evidence of the actual location of Mount Sinai, the very place where God's presence was revealed in a blazing fire? New York Times best-selling author, filmmaker, and teacher Joel Richardson is back with 2 brand new works that take these subjects head-on. Skywatch TV is proud to announce the Joel Richardson 2-book special offer. This special offer includes The Mystery of Catastrophe, where you'll learn to view catastrophes in an entirely new light. You will see firsthand how God uses natural and man-made disasters to specifically position people to hear the gospel of the one and only true God and receive salvation through His Son, Jesus Christ. This must-read book will walk you step by step down the eschatological road of biblical prophecies to offer meaning and hope to individuals that are suffering. In this timely 2-book special offer, you'll also receive Mount Sinai in Arabia, the true location revealed. Complete with more than 50 full-color photographs and maps, this beautiful work takes a look at the biblical evidence for Mount Sinai being in the land of Midian, Mount Sinai in ancient Jewish, Christian, and Islamic traditions, the evidence that Paul journeyed to Mount Sinai, the discovery of Moses' altar, the golden calf, and so much more. Sold separately, these items hold a retail value of $40. Yours now for your donation of only $25 plus shipping and handling. Now's your chance to get both of these incredible new books at one super low price. Order the Joel Richardson special offer online now at the Skywatch TV store or call 844-750-4985.
One man, one microphone, and a need to tell the world what he thinks. This is A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. Coming up in our final segment tonight, we'll talk about the Watchmen as we return to Dallas in just a couple of weeks. You hear the Watchmen conference? Mike Kerr of Hear the Watchmen joins us to tell us about that. And that will be in our final segment after 8:30 Central Time tonight. Now, are we all created by God with intrinsic value, or are there some people walking the earth who we would consider flowers while the rest of us are just human weeds? This question is addressed by the documentary film Human Weeds and other uncomfortable issues raised by the modern transhumanist movement. Here is the audio from the trailer.
But the big problem, though, is that what we have now is we have this vibrant ecology, this wonderful planet, and we are the invasive species from hell.
We are destroying the ecosystem. We really are weeds in this sense.
I think the word eugenics raises a lot of strong emotions, but basically it's about wanting to have the best possible life for one's children.
Well, eugenics is fundamentally Darwinism applied to people.
Basically, we are trying to create this spirit on our planet which will allow everybody to become perfect.
Taking control of our own evolution. It's really about turning over the choices to us.
That if we are indeed steering our future, then we need to be responsible for it.
It's easy to say that someone else should be cultivated, someone else should be exterminated, when in fact it very well could be them too.
People don't think about that. by the time you think about it, it's too late. People need to decide, what do I believe about human life, and where does that thinking lead? Where has it led historically?
We don't need to stifle one side of the conversation in the hopes that it allows the other side of the conversation to thrive. What we do need to do is have the conversation. And by having it, I truly believe that that is going to make a big difference.
If you've never changed your mind about something, pinch yourself. You may be dead.
That's from the documentary film Human Weeds, now available at Cineve, iTunes, and at Amazon, where it's free for Amazon Prime members. And we welcome filmmaker Robert Blaise back to A View from the Bunker. Robert, good to talk with you again.
It's great to be back with you, Derek.
The website for the film is humanweeds.com. In the elevator pitch, how would you describe Human Weeds?
Basically, I tell people, ask the question, with the rise of Earth's population, will society purge, protect, or perfect the human surplus? And so it looks at the past, the present, and the future of eugenics from all sides of the issues, and let's kind of both sides present their arguments and leaves the choice to the audience to decide what they believe about human life.
So you say you present both sides of the argument, but so let's talk first of all about some of the people that you interviewed who are included in the film. Who did you talk to get both sides of this argument?
We got talked to quite a few. Dr. John Glad would be one who is a proponent of eugenics, even looking more from a historical perspective. But he also brought in, he was the first one actually that we interviewed that mentioned transhumanism and kind of got me onto that track. So we then went and interviewed several transhumanists who I'm sure you and your audience are very familiar with, Dr. Max Moore and his wife, Dr. Natasha Vita-Moore, and Dr. Anders Sandberg, and Dmitry Itzkov, who is the kind of the founder of the conference that we went to and interviewed these folks, the GF 2045 conference several years ago. So they were most of the transhumanists that we interviewed, as well as then on the other side, Dr. Georgia Purdom from Answers in Genesis, who's a molecular biologist. Eric Metaxas, who you heard there in the trailer, as well as Melissa Oden. She is an abortion survivor, so she adds a unique perspective to the eugenics issues, just providing a face for where these ideas lead to, and then a few others as well. So a pretty good mix. Another one who makes a brief appearance, Richard Cizik, who's part of the evangelical movement, but favors a lot of eugenics philosophies and sustainable development, those kinds of things. We tried to get a good mix of people from all different backgrounds and beliefs and kind of throw them in the pot together and see what came out of it. Jeremy Rifkin was another one. He's an advisor to the EU, very, very intelligent man, has lots of fascinating ideas and hypotheses. He also kind of addresses some of the transhumanist movement. I wouldn't say he is a transhumanist, but certainly is knowledgeable about AI technology and robotics and how they work in our society and all of that.
It's an interesting group, and this is sort of the approach that Tom Horn took when he approached making the film Inhuman, which takes a similar look, or takes a look at a similar topic. But it's interesting that you use the word eugenics and transhumanism so interchangeably. First of all, why do you? And secondly, would those in favor behind the transhumanist movement, do they consider their worldview eugenics or eugenicist?
Well, let me start with the second question there because it's a little faster to answer. And we actually asked them, I believe all of the transhumanists that I mentioned there, I think we pointedly asked them, would you consider transhumanism to be a manifestation or embracing eugenics? And we got a mixed reply. Some of them saw it as a liberal form of eugenics. So Dr. Anders Sandberg, I think in the film, even says that we should embrace this and not throw out an idea that was abused in history, but change maybe our methods if it's a good idea and attack immoral, and I think he said immoral and stupid ideas because they're immoral and stupid in the present, but to take, if there's truth behind it, we should embrace that and change maybe our methodology to help humanity. Others, like Dr. Max Moore, was pretty hesitant in finding a link. He didn't really see how they had much of a match between the two. Saw eugenics more as a kind of eliminating humanity and more of a thing of the past, and transhumanism as kind of helping develop our future human evolution and our future progress in society. So he said that he didn't see much of a link. So there's definitely a mixed bag there with that. I see a link in the pitch that I gave you of kind of the two areas that I see a link is with our human surplus, will we purge, protect, or perfect? I see the link with transhumanism in that third element, the perfecting, is the kind of their goal to perfect humanity and create the next stage of human evolution through technology and get rid of sicknesses and diseases and ultimately death. And so their idea there is to perfect the human race. And so we're looking at the past, the present, and the future of eugenics. And so I would argue that transhumanism is kind of the future of the eugenics movement that we know. So that's a quick answer to that. To make the logical argument of why I believe transhumanism is eugenics, you have to kind of delve into the history of eugenics, what it means at its core, and then I think it makes sense how transhumanism fits into that. So I could go into that, but that's a little bit longer of an answer, but definitely an interesting one. I think one that a lot of people have seen the film have been really fascinated by as they've understood. A lot of people don't know what eugenics means. They hear the word and they don't know what it is. But in the film, we define it and show its history, where it is now, where it's going, and they see the link with transhumanism, and it really blows their minds.
We'll talk about the history of transhumanism. That's something that Sharon and I have talked about to some degree on our podcasts, but I think the visual impact of seeing it in a film has got to be more powerful than just hearing a couple of people out here in the Ozarks kind of yakking about it. Sharon's got a connection because she graduated as an adult student from Indiana University, which I'm sure you know, Robert Starr Jordan, one of the early leaders of the eugenics movement, was very prominent there and then went out to Stanford to become the founding administrator, and I forget the title that he had there, but he was basically in charge of Stanford when it was founded. And he was a very prominent eugenicist. So that's something that hits kind of close to home. And I know that you're Indiana-based as well. What is the history of eugenics in the United States? How long did it last? How popular an idea and a concept was it, and why did it go away?
Yeah. So eugenics is a term that was coined by Francis Galton in the 1800s. Galton was a cousin of Charles Darwin, and he basically took his cousin's theory of evolution, which is at its core survival of the fittest by means of natural selection and advancement of species by means of evolution, and he applied it to humanity. And so it was the survival of the fittest by means of scientific selection. And his theory was, let's give natural selection a little helping hand here by using science and technology, if you will, to get to where we're going faster. Why not be better beings if we can accelerate that process. And so it has two forms of it, positive eugenics and negative eugenics. The positive eugenics is simply encouraging the promotion of the well-born, those who are physically and mentally fit. And negative eugenics is eliminating those who are unfit, the undesirables. So those who are sickly or unintelligent or poor, those who are, quote unquote, a drain on society or using up Earth's resources, things like that. And so it became wildly popular, actually, in the United States. We show even some pictures of towns all over the United States had eugenics fairs where families would compete for who had the most perfect family in that community, and things like the IQ tests and mental scales of your IQ level came very much from that idea, as they would test your mental prowess, and then even things like taking measurements of one's head and hands and things like that to determine physical fitness. Margaret Sanger, a lot of people know that name. She's the founder of Planned Parenthood, was a huge eugenicist and pretty openly embracing eugenics, and it just was the positive side of eugenics was enormously popular in the United States. But then it also had its negative element. The negative eugenics come in the form of segregation, especially with immigrants and blacks. There was a lot of segregation and sterilization. Sterilization was probably our biggest method of negative eugenics here in the United States. We didn't quite go to the extent of the Nazis of exterminating people and killing them in concentration camps or things like that. We allowed them to live, but we basically took away their means of propagating more people like them, was the idea. And eugenics basically just boils people down to a biological creature, and it looks at ethics from a biological standpoint. And so taking away their breeding ability is ethically right if all we are is biological animals in the eugenics eyes. So it was enormously popular here. I would say even the positive and the negative side of eugenics. People didn't want the poor, especially immigrant populations, just kind of coming in and tainting our society. And so there was just a lot of sterilization that went on with those who were more mentally handicapped or acted out in culture. And Indiana was actually the first state in America to officially, from the government, enact eugenics. And we go into the history there. We visited one of the eugenics farm colonies. It was the farm colony for the feeble-minded in Butlerville, Indiana. We were on site there, interviewed the historian there who's done a lot of research, and he talks through how negative eugenics was used right here in Indiana. And so he then helps us make the connection with Nazi Germany, and that Hitler sent many of his scientists, or German scientists even before Hitler, came to the United States and studied our methods, studied eugenics from us, and then went back to Germany and just implemented what we basically taught them. And there's even one poster that we show in the film, the American version and the Nazi version. It's almost the same. It's the same concept on the poster, just different illustration and obviously different text. But they used a lot of our same methods over in Germany, and that's how eugenics got a black name. Was obviously the Nazis. And the extermination that happened in the concentration camps, just applying applying the worldview of eugenics to create a master race. Let's get rid of the Jews and the other lower races as they saw them, and promote the Aryan race. And so they also had positive eugenics enacted of you had to prove your Aryan ancestry in order to get married, and they encouraged those people to have lots of babies and things like that. So the Nazis gave it a black eye when stuff came out about the concentration camps and its link to eugenics. And the term kind of fell out of style, but a lot of the ideas of perfecting humanity because of evolution have stayed very much as a part of our culture, just under different labels and different names.
We're talking with Robert Blaise on A View from the Bunker. He's the producer of the documentary film Human Weeds about the frankly, the rebranding of the eugenics movement into transhumanism. Robert, it's interesting. I was not aware that you visited that site at Butlerville. Very familiar with that area because Sharon is from just the other side of, well, they call it now the Big Oaks National Wildlife Refuge. It used to be the Jefferson Proving Ground.
Yeah.
Where Sharon's father worked.
Wow.
So they lived just on the south side of that area and lived in that area from about 1950 on. So this is real close to home, but it's a lot closer to home for many of us here in the United States than we realize. This practice of sterilizing women without their knowledge or consent, that really extended a lot later into our history than we think. In other words, it didn't end at World War II. This continued way into the 70s in some places, didn't it?
Absolutely. Well, what I found shocking, actually, when we were there in Butlerville, was the last patient on site to lock the doors and leave the facility, I believe, happened in 2007.
Oh, so wow.
It was, if it was not 2007, I know it was early 2000s. Now, she had been living there by herself for quite some time, and they hadn't had a great number of patients for a number of decades. Like you said, the 60s and 70s, they still had quite a few patients on site, I think in the hundreds. But by the 80s and 90s, those kinds of facilities had really fallen out of style. But yeah, they still had an actual patient into the 2000s on site.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I know this is not just Indiana; it's all over the country. There are court cases that were filed or went through the system within the last few years of women who were sterilized in North Carolina, if I remember correctly, as late as the 1970s without their knowledge. And again, it's all about the desire to not, and to use the words of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg in describing why Roe v. Wade was litigated to avoid having too many of the wrong kind of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, yeah. That's exactly what their belief was. Yeah, and it wasn't just women who were sterilized; it was both men and women. That it was part of the process, if you will, to gain your freedom outside of these mental institutions. They call it forced sterilization because it was basically put to them, if you want to live, then you're going to have to be sterilized. And so they would agree to be sterilized. They would go through that process and they'd be set free to return to their families if the families would have them.
Yeah, but in some cases, the women were told they were just going in for health checkups and came out and found out later that they weren't able to have children. Well, let's bring this into the present day as we relate this to where we are today, because I think the average American who's even heard of eugenics, which again is a minority, but those of us who have heard, we tend to think that this really doesn't have any impact on our lives today. But as I made the comment about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, her comments and her defenders say, well, that wasn't really what she meant, and she wasn't really saying what it sounds like she said. But how do we reconcile that with the statistics that show, for example, in New York City, more than half of the African-American babies will be terminated in the womb? How does that differ? How does the modern abortion movement, the right of a woman to choose, the constitutionally protected right of a woman to choose, differ from eugenics? Or does it?
It really doesn't at all.
That was kind of a rhetorical question, but yeah.
We delve a lot into the topic of abortion, beginning just in the history of eugenics with Margaret Sanger, because she was probably the biggest name that most people will recognize in terms of the eugenics movement in the United States. and really was a strong proponent of it, openly so, in the United States. And we actually have a video clip interview of her on a television show where she talks about she believes the greatest sin a human being can commit is to have children when they are unable to care for those children and provide them with a means of contributing to society. And she believes that's the worst sin that a human being can commit. And so she's very open about that. And so her foundation, Planned Parenthood, really does target the people that she deemed to be unworthy of life and a drain on society. And you will find those a vast majority of Planned Parenthood facilities will be on inner cities, targeting blacks specifically and poor, underprivileged people, especially a single parent homes, because they have the view that these people are a drain on society, and society would be better off without adding more people like this.
But instead of framing it that way, instead of framing it as, hey, society would be better off without more people like you, which would tend to make people defensive. It's like, wait a minute now, who are you to tell me? Instead, it's like, this is for your good. Really, you're struggling just to get by right now. Can you really? Yeah. And now it's almost become a matter of convenience. Hey, I'm not ready to stop. I'm having fun.
Right.
I can't have a child now. This would cramp my lifestyle. It's been sold to us as a benefit, whereas 100 years ago, when this was being presented, it was all about the common good. We need to enhance the gene pool by making sure we don't have more idiots, more feeble-minded.
So nowadays, the rationale for eugenics has really changed to be one that's more environmental. So with Germans, the eugenics goal was Germany was the preeminent thing that you sacrificed your families and your lives for Germany. Germany was the ultimate being there, in a sense. And now it's become the earth and the planet, the environment. And so Eric Metaxas does a great job in the film of saying that we're kind of that the news and our media frames humanity as a drain on the planet, and that the planet takes precedence over people. And so if you are consuming more of Earth's resources than you are contributing, then you're a danger to society as a whole in that regards. And so to be cleaner or better for the planet, then we need less people gobbling up Earth's resources. And so that's another argument that the eugenics movement, again, not by name eugenics, but the same philosophy is being touted today.
Well, we'll talk more about that as we move into the second half of this interview. Robert Blaise is our guest on A View from the Bunker. We're talking about his documentary film, Human Weeds, which is available now on several streaming platforms, Cineve, iTunes, and Amazon Prime. And if you're an Amazon Prime subscriber, like Sharon and me, you can watch the film for free. And he's not kidding, by the way, about the Nazis and their commitment to being green. In the show notes at vftb.net, I'll put a link to an interview I did several years ago with Mark Musser about his book, Nazi Oaks. This all ties together, the environmental movement, eugenics, and the modern transhumanists. We're talking about Human Weeds, the documentary film, and our conversation continues next on A View from the Bunker. A new take on the prophesied war of Gog and Magog. Forget about Russia coming from the uttermost parts of the north. The enemy foreseen by the prophet Ezekiel is so much bigger and so much older. It's Last Clash of the Titans by Derek P. Gilbert, a #1 new release in Amazon's Christian history category. Last Clash of the Titans breaks down step by step how Greek mythology grew out of Canaanite religion, why the old gods of the Greeks, the Titans, were the watchers who descended on the summit of Mount Hermon, and why the Titans will return from the abyss for one final battle against God, Armageddon. Last Clash of the Titans, backed up by peer-reviewed academic research. Tom Horn calls this book stunning. Last Clash of the Titans, the second coming of Hercules, Leviathan, and the prophesied war between Jesus Christ and the gods of antiquity. Get it as part of a special offer at skywatchtvstore.com and available now in paperback and as a Kindle ebook at amazon.com. Driving the internet to think. This is A View from the Bunker, live every Sunday night. I'm Derek Gilbert. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, we talk with Mike Kerr of Hear the Watchmen as the Watchmen prepare to return to Dallas. The Hear the Watchmen conference coming back to the DFW Lakes Conference Center in just 2 weeks. Again, that'll be after 8:30 Central Time here on A View from the Bunker. Now, we return to our topic tonight, which is really important because it's been so cleverly rebranded that we are missing the point in America. The film Human Weeds, about the modern transhumanist movement and how it's simply repackaged, rebranded eugenics. Filmmaker Robert Blaise joins us. Robert, you mentioned the environmental issue just before the break, and I want to kind of expand on that a little bit. How is that idea that we need to be green, we need to conserve our resources, we need to recycle, et cetera, how does that play into or fit into this idea that some humans are more worthy than others of passing on our genes?
Yeah, it comes down to the use of resources. And so especially, I think Eric Metaxas, again, kind of goes into this in greater detail towards the end of the film of saying that especially in the later part of our lives, all of us will become older and more sickly. A lot of times the most expensive part of our lives is the last few years of our life.
Tell me about it. Yeah, tell me about it.
And so that's if healthcare becomes rationed from the government, then they'll look at people basically as a number, and it becomes a math equation of how much is it going to cost to keep this person alive, and what's the benefit? What are they going to be able to contribute back? And so, if Earth's resources, factor into that equation, then and you come at it with this eugenics mindset of an evolutionary mindset that we're an accident, and so life doesn't really have intrinsic value, then it's very easy to put oneself in the lifeboat scenario, the classic school scenario of X amount of people in the lifeboat, X amount of resources. Who do you get rid of for the better good of the people on board?
So. And of course, I'm forgetting her name now. The former Alaska governor, who was John McCain's vice presidential candidate.
Oh, yep. I know. I see her face. Sarah Palin.
Sarah Palin. So she was not far off the mark. She wasn't crazy when she talked about death panels.
Oh no, not. I would say no. It's definitely been an idea that's been juggled around. I think it's probably in the back of a lot of people's head that they know it's got to go there at some point when things get stark enough, and when resources get tight, it's going to go there.
The irony of this is that, and I just saw this story a couple of weeks ago, that a couple of Canadian demographers looking at the actual numbers of birth rates around the world have found that this type of propaganda, that we're overusing the Earth's resources, that we're in danger of overrunning Earth's carrying capacity, which has been taught since Thomas Malthus back in the 19th century came up with the idea. In fact, I remember as a high school debate team member, we would always talk about the Malthusian nightmare. If we make people too healthy, there'll be too many babies and we'll suddenly all starve. And this has been one of the arguments for population control, for birth control, for a long, long time. We're having too many children. We're going to starve because we'll overstress the Earth. But these Canadian demographers, a few weeks ago, they've published a new book in which they argue that the numbers show that we're actually going to reach a peak on the Earth. Instead of hitting 11 billion by the end of the 21st century, which is what the United Nations has been telling us, we'll probably peak at around 9 billion by 2050 or 2060, and then population will begin to decline. And once it begins to decline, it may never stop. And the implications of that is that we get older. I'm 57 now, so this hits real close to home for me. As we get older, and we're living in a system here in the United States where Social Security and Medicare requires about 6 if I remember correctly, about 6 workers paying for each one of us who draws on it. And I'm not there yet, but by the middle of the century, we'll be down to a 3-to-1 ratio. And by the end of the 21st century, we'll be down to 2-to-1. In other words, it's not supportable. It's not sustainable. There'll be too many people needing this expensive health care that you talked about for the available workforce. So we're actually looking at the other problem. We've got, yes, more demand for healthcare resources, but because the population isn't growing, we're just not going to have enough people to pay for those resources.
Right. And that's another part of the equation that Dr. James Martin, who is another big British transhumanist, we actually interviewed him literally days before he died, brought up the Chinese one-child policy and said China, brought in the one-child policy, was very forceful about applying it, and yet years later their population went up another 0.3 billion people. And how does that happen? And he said, well, life expectancy has gone way up in China, and so you can't just look at the number of our birthing ratio, but also our life expectancy. That plays a factor into population and consequently the use of resources.
And, of course, transhumanists assume that they'll somehow be able to crack the secret of death, so we'll all live forever, which means we better reduce the population, the number of live births per woman down to 1 or below. It's already below 1 in some parts of East Asia now. Hong Kong, Singapore, below 1. And just to maintain population, you got to be at 2.1.
Right, yep.
But again, it's that bulge in the population curve. As the baby boomers get into their 60s and 70s, things are going to start getting a little dicey here. Well, let's talk about how this relates to evolution, because you have alluded to a phrase that was used very prominently by the eugenicists of 100 years ago, self-directed evolution. Is that something that the modern transhumanists have adopted?
Well, basically, I believe any transhumanist would wholeheartedly agree that transhumanism is a form or a byproduct of evolution. In fact, Dr. John Glad, who first kind of put us on this, definitely talks about it being the jumpstart to the next stage of human evolution. And so the connection of transhumanists and the eugenics movement that I see is transhumanism really focusing on the positive eugenics. They don't, and I think this may be why a lot of several of the ones that we interviewed didn't see a connection between transhumanism and eugenics, is because they kind of think of the negative side of eugenics. We hear eugenics and think Nazi concentration camps, and so really, in my limited exposure to transhumanism and coming at it from the angle of eugenics, don't see a connection between transhumanism and negative eugenics. However, there's a huge connection between transhumanism and positive eugenics, and that is promoting the population, the promotion of the well-born through, and that being seen as a healthy, intelligent population. And so transhumanism is all about intelligence and developing better technology and learning science and how our bodies work and how we can merge robotics and AI technology with human DNA. That takes an incredible amount of intelligence. And then, of course, health. They want to get rid of sickness and disease and ultimately death by having these computer people, if you will, uploading your consciousness to an avatar and being able to, just press a button and update and get the latest version of you to combat sickness and diseases or things like that. And that is definitely a form of positive eugenics and really then creating the next stage of human evolution in their eyes, that we were amoeba and then some sort of a multicellular creature and eventually a chimpanzee and then a Neanderthal and then a modern day human, and then we'll be a human plus a computer person, and that will be better than where we are today and where we've been in the past. So they really see a huge connection between transhumanism and the theory of evolution and positive eugenics in that regard.
The one question that I've not yet heard a transhumanist give a good answer to is who decides? Who decides who gets to upgrade? Who decides who is worthy of upgrading? How do they address that issue? Because it seems to me this is the key question that the key point that completely dismantles their vision of a completely egalitarian future.
Yeah, and it's funny that you bring that up because Dr. Georgia Purdom, the molecular biologist from Answers in Genesis, literally says that. For word, she says, "Who decides?"
I knew I liked her. We met her at the opening of the Ark Encounter a couple of years ago. Yeah. Got to talk with her.
So the closest we got to that was actually an answer. It's in the film from Dr. Natasha Vita-Moore, and I'll just read you the quote. I have the transcript of the film up. And so here's what she said. I think is probably the closest that we got from them is she says, quote, "You ought to be given the right or ought to have the right to enhance yourself and to live longer as a human type of right. Likewise, if you want to remain a biological animal with a limited lifespan as a human, that is your right, and you ought never to be coerced to live longer or enhance," unquote. So both her and Dr. Anders Sandberg talk about one of the problems of eugenics movement in the past was that it was centralized and coercive. People didn't have a choice to buy into the eugenics plan or this movement. And so their argument is to be more ethical. It's something that you buy into. You choose to upgrade yourself to these the human plus and to these avatars and computer people. And if you want to just skip out on that and live for 70 years and die and not live forever, then that's fine. Be a biological animal. We're going to rule the world through our robotic life, basically. So that's the closest I got to an answer from them with that. We interviewed Dr. James Martin from Germany, who I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he's a Christian who has studied transhumanism and really goes into exposing transhumanism. And he explicitly says, look, the transhumanists have a lot of these kind of noble ideas of it being a personal choice as to whether or not you buy into this, but again, bring up the same point that when push comes to shove and resources get tight, it's going to turn coercive. The transhumanism movement is going to be a coercive thing that's put on you that, and it may not be transhumanism itself, but maybe the government's kind of adopting eugenics again in a negative form, that healthcare will be rationed, and so we won't allow certain people access to healthcare. That'll be the negative side of eugenics, and let's promote this transhumanist stuff and using technology to enhance our bodies is kind of the positive side of eugenics. A lot of that is still speculative because we haven't got there yet. It's kind of wondering where will these go, but I think they are valid.
We're talking with Robert Blaise on A View from the Bunker. He's a producer of the film Human Weeds, available at iTunes, Cineve, and Amazon Prime, about the transhumanist movement and its similarity, really, to the eugenics movement of a century ago. Robert, the reason I bring this up is because even if it's not coercive, it seems to me that there's a financial divide between those who can afford the very best that healthcare or life extension technology has to offer and those who cannot.
Certainly. And
just as we see there are those who are willing to pay for experimental treatments when they get ill, which again is their right, there will be those who, but I think at a more basic level, we see that those with financial advantages have access to better healthcare, period, better schooling, educational opportunities. And when you look at, for example, the United States Supreme Court, that every single one of them is from an Ivy League school, if not, they're all from Yale or Harvard or just Ivy League in general. There are certain funnels that kind of filter people out naturally, and it's always been this way in human societies. There are always elites. There are always those who are at the bottom of the pyramid,
Mm-hmm.
How do transhumanists propose to eliminate that when it comes to suddenly making available the secret to eternal life through technology? How is it not going to be just limited to the very wealthy?
Right. Yeah. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know, and I don't even know. I think a lot of them would probably speculate onto that, and there might be a division within the transhumanism movement as to whether or not it would be something just limited to the very rich. Dr. Martin Erdman, again from Germany, brought up that point in our interview, that he talked about that very same thing, that these technologies and options are expensive and they'd only be available to the very rich, and that's kind of who's behind this movement. I could see someone arguing that technology is expensive in its inception, but it quickly drops in price and becomes much more affordable for the common person. Something I found in interviewing all of the transhumanists is they agree on the core philosophy of transhumanism, but a lot of the peripheral issues, there's a lot of differences in the movement. So for instance, a comedic one is half of them at the conference were saying, yeah, we're pretty much like Star Trek, and the other half were saying, no, we're nothing like Star Trek. This is completely different.
We're like Star Wars.
And so I think they're probably the answer to your question there would depend on the transhumanists you're asking. Some of them would say, yeah, that's part of the plan is to, if you can afford this technology, you're smart enough and healthy enough and a benefit enough to society to be worth living. So it's kind of a self-fulfilling mission there to determine who survives and who carries on. And you'll probably find transhumanists who say, no, we want this available to everyone, and we want to make the technology eventually cheap enough that it's easy to go online and upload your consciousness to some program or something. So I can see, I'm sure there are transhumanists on both sides of that equation.
Yeah, well, again, looking at the 6,000 years of recorded human history, good luck with that.
Well, and good luck figuring out a way to never die, too.
Yeah. Well, then that brings us into the area of the metaphysical. As Christians, Robert, why should we care what the transhumanists are trying to do? Isn't technology that makes our lives more, say, free of pain and medical issues, extends our lives radically? Why is this something that we as Christians should be concerned about?
Great question. I think it all comes down to worldviews and ideas, starting points, and where those ideas take us. And that's really, I hope, the main thing that people walk away from watching my film Human Weeds is seeing that ideas have consequences and they lead to certain outcomes. And so I think the difference is the transhumanist starts with a starting point of a biological accident, and we came here because of an accident, and so life is meaningless. We're evolving into some unknown progression, but life has no meaning. And honestly, if you are consistent with that worldview, there really is no source of ethics, and everyone should be able to do what is right in his own eyes. From a Christian standpoint, we were created in God's image, and so our value is infinite, and life has meaning and value and should be protected. And so when you look at technology and medicine, we should be learning how our body works and how we can combat disease, because we love life and we want to protect people. And, in the Middle Ages, we thought the heart and the brain were useless organs, and people died at commonly at age 30 and 40. And now we figured out, no, these organs are very valuable. Here's how we can help them. We've extended life. Quality of life and life expectancy. And so I think we can be very much in favor of a lot of the technologies that transhumanists are also in favor of, but we're coming at it from a different starting point and with a different purpose in mind. Our purpose isn't to become gods who live forever. Our purpose is to help enhance and understand the life that God created and understand His design and how we can help people have a better life here to then be able to understand Him personally in a relationship as Creator and Savior and worship Him with our lives. And so I think we can be in favor of a lot of the same technologies, but with a different starting point, a different way of getting there, and a different purpose in mind. And so for me, that's where I see Christians shouldn't embrace transhumanism as an idea, but we could still be in favor of the development of certain technologies and scientific findings in the medical community, and we could come alongside some transhumanists in that, but then want to have the conversation with them of saying, look, why are we trying to figure this technology out or develop this technology, and have a genuine conversation with them where we listen to their beliefs and share our own. And that's what I was able to do in the making of this documentary, is sit down with them. And, I thought they were neo-Nazis who hated people and wanted to exterminate half the world's population. And I found out that they love humanity, they love life, and they're wonderful, fun people I could have a barbecue with. One was asking us to stay after the interview and have ice cream in his apartment. And I mean, they're just delightful people, but they have a different starting point than I do, a different worldview. And those ideas lead to very serious and, in my opinion, very dangerous results. And so I can argue with them of our ideas, but still love and enjoy them as a person. And so I think in our divisive culture, we need to be able to separate the person from the idea and not attack a person as being evil and stupid because we don't like what they believe.
Yeah.
But listen to them, understand actually their argument. I could sit here for a half hour and give you a solid argument for transhumanism and why it's logical, because I've sat down with them and heard it from their own lips. And I think that's then advantageous for me to then understand how it's wrong and why it's dangerous, because I understand where it comes from and how to be consistent with it. And I can see that's a faulty starting point, and it's a dangerous idea that's going to lead to the deaths of untold millions like it has in the past.
And that's really what we're called to do anyway, as Christians, is to be prepared to give the hope, the reasons for the hope that we have in Jesus Christ with gentleness and respect. And it's hard to do when we're coming at it with the attitude that we see on social media.
Exactly.
We disagree with. And that was kind of the attitude behind the True Legends team when they brought together speakers for the Transhumanism and the Hybrid Age Conference in Branson last September, and where they got a number of non-Christian speakers or guys who at least have not come all the way yet in their walk, like Richard Dolan or Dr. Hugo de Garis. And it was really interesting hearing a variety of perspectives on that particular topic.
Absolutely.
And again, Tom Horn will say the same thing in the course of the interviews that they conducted for Inhuman, the documentary. They likewise talked to Max Moore, Dr. Vita Moore, and some others. One who is on the record as saying he thinks Tom Horn is crazy. But one of the but it was interesting that as that conference took place in Branson in September, just a couple of weeks earlier, was the very first, or was billed at least as the first Christian transhumanist conference in Nashville. Yeah. So taking a look at what they propose, how do Christian transhumanists try to reconcile a Christian worldview, a Christian understanding of our role in the cosmos vis-a-vis God, and the transhumanist ideals of trying to extend human life through technology to, eternity, if we can?
I think I haven't personally interviewed or talked with anyone who would claim to be a Christian transhumanist. I know it's becoming a bigger movement, and for me, I would assume that it's probably just that they're being fed with so many different ideas from different places that seem logical and reasonable, And, you sit with one person long enough and they tell you what they believe, and it makes sense and can be reasonable. And if you don't have a firm foundation of your starting point and an objective source of truth, then it's going to be very easy to be deceived by every wind of doctrine and spirit of the age, and adopt a crazy conglomeration of beliefs of saying, I'm going to take a scrap from here and a piece of this and come up with my own belief of reality. And so I think it just comes from not having a strong enough starting point, and if they are a true Christian in Christianity, if they're coming from a transhumanist standpoint, then and adopting Christianity into that, probably just being more of a trying to be more tolerant, if you will, or inclusive, and it comes, I think, more from ignorance, and they just need to learn and study what they truly believe and where it comes from and why do you believe what you believe. I think the why is more important than the what in terms of our worldview. It is important to know what you believe, but why do you believe that, and where do those ideas take you?
I think it has a lot to do with one's view of eschatology, what you believe about prophecy and what our ultimate destiny is as humans. John Haller, a friend of ours from Ohio, said this, that he can pretty much tell how people will approach their theology, their daily walk as Christians, by knowing what they believe about end times prophecy, or how things play out in the end. If you don't believe that Jesus literally returns and we are literally raised from the dead, according to Paul, 1 Corinthians 15, we will not all sleep, but we shall all be changed, then you might be more inclined to believe that since God has gifted us with the intelligence to create and invent these technologies, that we should then use them to try to overcome death, even though the Bible tells us that death will not be defeated until the end, when death and Hades are thrown into the lake of fire by Jesus. Obviously, if you don't start from a Christian worldview, like many transhumanists, they're for example, Zoltan Istvan, who ran as president on the Transhumanist Party ticket in 2016, he is openly an atheist. And when you believe that there is nothing after your final breath, then of course you would want to do everything possible to extend life through technology. But as Christians, it seems like it kind of depends on what you think your ultimate destiny is as a Christian. So, well, one final note. Let me, or one final question, Robert. When you were conducting these interviews for Human Weeds, what was the most surprising thing that you learned during the process?
Definitely the history of eugenics within America was a huge surprise to me, and seeing how prevalent it was, and that it was right here in my backyard of Indiana, and the extent of it. But the biggest takeaway, I would say, was what I mentioned about my perspective of people on the other side of the fence. I started the project thinking they're evil and they hate people and they're just horrible people with a lot of aggression and angst. And I got to, and I had built a straw man argument against their beliefs and an ad hominem. And if they said something, then it had to be wrong. And just in sitting down with them and asking questions and being in a position, when you're conducting an interview for a documentary, you let your subject do most of the talking, and so it forces you to listen. And to be able to do that and actually slow myself down and listen to someone I disagreed with taught me so much about what they believe and who they were, and I could then more rationally argue against the idea and not the person. And I could argue better against the idea because I understood it better. It became important for me to be able to have an intelligent conversation with someone that I disagree with, knowing what they personally believe about a subject and how they got there, and then to be able to help them dissect that and show the either faulty logic or the ramifications of their beliefs, things like that. So it just taught me so much about how to disagree with someone is first to learn from them, listen to them, get to know them better, and then get to know their ideas better. And then I can better lovingly argue against those ideas or help them to the truth.
Wise words, and ones that I'm still trying to incorporate into my approach to doing talk radio, which I've been doing for 13 years now. So, but well said. Robert Blaise is the producer of the film Human Weeds. It's available now for rent or purchase at Cineve, iTunes, and Amazon. Rent for $4.99, purchase for $12.99. But if you're an Amazon Prime subscriber, you're in. It's available for free. So we will be watching that. And Robert, appreciate you taking the time out to talk with us tonight, and appreciate very much the research and the work that you put into the film Human Weeds.
Well, thank you so much, Derek. It's been a pleasure. And for your audience, if they're interested in looking at it, they can find links to all three of those at our website, humanweeds.com. They can also go to those sources and just search for Human Weeds, but we have them all available right on humanweeds.com on the front page to make it easy for them to find.
That's the easy way to do it. Humanweeds.com. Robert Blaise, the producer. Thanks again, Robert. I'm sure we'll stay in touch because this is a topic that we will return to as we go forward. It is an important topic because, again, it's one that is being sold to us under the guise of life extension, of women's health care, and so on. And we as Christians need to understand the arguments on their side so that we, as Robert said, can formulate loving, cohesive, logical responses that are consistent with our Christian worldview. Humanweeds.com, the website. As we continue our final segment, we talk about the Watchmen returning to Dallas, and speaking of transhumanism, our robot overlords may already be here. That's ahead on A View from the Bunker.
For thousands of years, the world has heard warning that there is a coming day when the man of sin, the Antichrist, will arise to pilot the greatest deception in human history. Prepare yourself now for what is ahead with the coming Third Temple Collection. This incredible assortment features Dr. Thomas Horn's new book, The Rabbis, Donald Trump, and the Top Secret Plan to Build the Third Temple, where you'll learn why many believe President Trump is a King Cyrus-like figure, guided by Hashem, God himself. The connection between Donald Trump, rabbis, and a behind-the-scenes scheme to erect the Third Temple, and how this, as the book of Daniel prophesied, will be the catalyst that precedes the apocalypse and arrival of Antichrist. All this and so much more. This unbelievable collection also includes best-selling author Carl Gallup's brand new book, The Rabbi, The Secret Message, and the Identity of Messiah, which reveals how Israel's most venerated Orthodox rabbi, Yitzhak Kaduri, came face-to-face with the true Messiah and said that it was Jesus Christ. You may know that much of the story, but now you can learn what's happened since. Discover the secrets, witness tampering, intimidation tactics, global media, and powerful personalities who will stop at nothing, including death threats and even ritualistic curses to cover up this new, stunning revelation. But we're just getting started. The coming Third Temple Collection also includes Shelley Neese's new book, The Copper Scroll Project, that highlights the decades-long quest to uncover Qumran's greatest secrets, the lost treasures of the Jerusalem Temple. Hold on to your hats as you'll also discover how the Dead Sea Scrolls were merely the tip of the archaeological iceberg as Jim Barfield's Copper Scroll Project tethers to Israel's modern battle for the Temple Mount, and how the secrets contained in the Copper Scroll, the most enigmatic of the Dead Sea Scrolls, might hold the key to one of the greatest treasures in Israel's history. But that's not all. You'll also receive the best of the first annual Blessed Hope Prophecy Conference on DVD. This 2-disc DVD collection is jam-packed with over 11 hours of mind-boggling revelations from presenters like Dr. Thomas Horn on deep state saboteurs and the secret destiny of America, Sharon Gilbert on the return of the ancients through pharmakia, necromancy, and virtual reality, Lieutenant Colonel Robert McGinnis on the inside war against President Trump by elite secret societies, and unforgettable presentations from celebrated theologians theologian Dr. Michael Lake, Derek P. Gilbert, Josh Peck, and more. Also included in this amazing collection, the original 4-week investigative Skywatch television series regarding the coming Third Temple on DVD, featuring Carl Gallups, Shelley Neese, and Dr. Thomas Horn. Sold separately, these items hold a retail value of $180. Yours now for your donation of only $30 plus shipping and handling. Now's your chance to save big. The coming Third Temple collection, available now at Skywatch TV store. Order online or call 844-750-4985.
Shall we begin? Let's begin now.
Sunday night means View from the Bunker Live. I'm Derek Gilbert. Next week, we talk about the men of renown, the mighty men who were of old, the Genesis 6 conspiracy. Its author Gary Wayne will be our guest on A View from the Bunker. Join us next week. That's March 24th, live beginning at 7 p.m. Central Time, which now that we are in daylight savings time means it's UTC minus 5. Oh, so confusing. President Trump could guarantee re-election in 2020 just by issuing an executive order, just putting an end to this shifting of the time zones, or the shifting of the time. Just call it what. Just let's stop here. Let's just call daylight savings time standard time and just leave it at that. Won't happen, I'm sure, but anyway. So that will be next week's program. Gary Wayne coming up the week after that. Darren Geisinger, the author of Zero G's and the coordinator of the True Legends Conference, coming in the fall. We'll talk about his book and the use of science fiction to tell a Christian story, and what the theme of this year's conference will be very much right up his alley, because it will address the alien question. So that's March 31st. That'll be a pre-recorded program, as we will still be in Dallas at the Hear the Watchmen conference, and we'll talk with Mike Kerr here in just a minute. Well, I'll tell you what. We got a couple of news items to roll out here, but rather than try to guesstimate where we're going to do here, let's bring our guest in before we get into that, because there are a couple of things to talk about. Researchers concerned about the algorithms and the artificial intelligences that have already been deployed in the wild and how they're controlling our lives. We'll talk about that. Also, a proposed bill here in the state of Missouri that, if it passes, and I doubt that it will. In fact, I don't think the legislator who's proposing it thinks it's going to pass, but if it passes, it would require every adult between the age of 18 and 34 here in the state of Missouri to own an AR-15 style rifle. We'll talk about that. But first, let's talk about the fellow who is, let's bring in the fellow who is coordinating the Hear the Watchmen conference, at which Gary Wayne will be speaking, among others. To give us an update, since we're just 2 weeks out, we welcome back to A View from the Bunker, Mike Kerr.
Well, Derek, thank you for having me back. And yes, it's you're having some weather there, and we're having a little bit of weather up here. We're not quite out of the woods yet with the cold weather and some of the challenges that winter brings.
Well, here we're dealing with the onset of spring. It is definitely coming into like a lion here in the Ozarks. We've got a lot of rain predicted for today and tomorrow as we record this on March the 12th. But we're talking about what's coming up just a couple of weeks out, beginning March 28th. Down at the Hilton DFW Lakes Conference Center in Dallas. Grapevine, Texas, actually close to the airport there. Very convenient to get to and from the airport. And Dallas being a hub is convenient for folks like us in Springfield, Missouri, or near Springfield, Missouri. We can fly direct without having to, make 2 or 3 connections to get from here to there. But it's very close. What's the status right now? Do I understand correctly that the conference is almost sold out?
Almost, yeah. Now, we will have some people cancel, and then those tickets will go back in the system. So what I suggest everybody do, go and try it. Go and try. If it doesn't work and it tells you the ticket is sold out, then send me an email, and I'll go through my list and see what we can find. But yes, you can still go on as of today and get tickets. And you want to use the code Gilbert20. That will get you $20 off your physical ticket. Now, if you can't come to the conference in person, you want to avail yourself of the streaming option. You get to watch it for 6 months. We guarantee the stream. You can go back and watch it over and over again. If you use that code, Gilbert20, it will get you 20%, not $20, but 20%, which is, I think, about $10 off the streaming package.
Yeah. So even if you can't be there in Dallas, the next best thing is bringing the conference to you and watching it in the comfort of your living room. And you can stream it into your laptop, a tablet, or if you've got a Vimeo account, which is easy enough to set up and it doesn't cost anything, you can run it through a Roku box or Apple TV or Amazon Fire Stick and then set it up to your TV. Or you can connect your laptop, for example, through an HDMI cable. Most modern laptops have HDMI outputs. Run that to the HDMI input on your television, and then you can very simply stream to your laptop, run it through your TV, and watch it on the big screen, which is the way to do it because this video stream is in high definition.
And we have excellent technical people that back this all up for us. So again, and that's why we say we will guarantee the stream. If we can't fix it for you, then we will just simply refund your money if you choose that option.
Yeah.
But Derek, the topics right now, the overall theme of the conference is sounding the alarm, and it is time to sound the alarm. We are in the end days, and it's time for us all to get out there and sound the alarm. And I was looking over the topics that the speakers have been sending in, and I noticed yours. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your topic?
Well, the last few times that we've been at Hear the Watchmen, I've presented new talks, and I like to do that every time because, and we'll talk about the DVD package that's available from the conference here in just a little bit, but for people who purchase a DVD set, I don't want to just rehash the same topic over and over again because these are going to be out there forever, and I'd like people to hear something new every time. And it forces me to do some research and some digging and some writing. And I'll be honest, Mike, the 3 solo books that I've written, actually 2 solo books plus the one I co-authored with Josh Peck, have come out of presentations that I've delivered at Hear the Watchmen. In fact, my 4th book, which is coming out this summer, also came out of a session that I delivered at Hear the Watchmen. So if you haven't purchased the DVD sets, you kind of get a preview of what I'm talking about. Well, this time I just feel led to sort of recap a little bit and explain why I write and research what I do. Why is it important to understand the divine counsel concept and the literal existence of evil intelligences, call them principalities, powers, fallen angels, whatever? Why is it important to understand that they're real and why they want to destroy you and everyone you love? It's because we're in the middle of a war. So the presentation title is This is War, a call to arms for the Church of Laodicea, which is the modern-day church in America. Most of us don't believe that the spirit realm is really real, even though that should be our default setting as Christians. We're told in the epistles, in the Bible, that we wrestle not against flesh and blood. Well, if that's true, and it is, why do 60% of American Christians believe Satan is just a concept or a philosophical symbol rather than the literal embodiment of evil? And he's not alone.
I mean, it's frightening. I mean, they're probably the same reason they believe in the Easter Bunny. But,
so that's the whole point of the talk.
It is frightening. Yeah, because the church, as we've talked about before, the church has gone silent on a lot of these issues. Right. And I know that even when we say we're sounding the alarm, Jesus is coming, some people freak out because they think like, oh, you're setting a date. No, we didn't say anything about setting a date. We just said this is the title that we were given in prayer. And we are going to bring all of you guys out there to talk and to share new information. Like you said, we have a couple of new people coming. We have Stephen Bankars, and you could probably give a great update on Stephen, because Stephen is also from the Skywatch family. Is that right?
Well, he's a co-author with Josh Peck of the book The Second Coming of the New Age, which we highly recommend. Stephen and Josh both come out of the New Age movement. Both of them were, you would almost call them adepts in New Age spiritual disciplines, practicing spiritual disciplines that allowed them to leave their bodies. We're talking astral projection, communing with other spirits before they were led to the saving gospel of Jesus Christ. So they can speak from personal experience as to how dangerous the New Age movement really is, and the fact that it is entering our churches, infiltrating our churches, which we should expect if we're in the middle of a war. What do you do when you try to send your spies and your saboteurs into the enemy camp, into enemy cities, to try to destroy them from the inside? And that's exactly what the enemy, principalities, powers, cosmic rulers of this present darkness are trying to do here. Well, Stephen will be one of the speakers addressing this topic. His discussion is called New Age Deception in the End Times, and he'll be drawing, again, on his personal experience, but also on research done by groups like the Pew Research Center, by the Barna Group, and so on, showing how many Christians in America today, basically, it's interesting, Mike, looking at how these topics dovetail. I'll be talking about why don't American Christians believe the spirit realm is really real. Stephen will be talking about how many American Christians are, knowingly or not, incorporating New Age beliefs into what they think is Christianity. Stuff that runs completely counter to Christian doctrine. So, yeah, really looking forward to him. Gary Wayne, another new speaker, the author of the very popular book, The Genesis 6 Conspiracy, showing how these ancient principalities and powers, the watchers of Genesis 6, are still influencing the world today. And then Urban Baxter at End Time Ministries to talk about how all this is going to come to a head at Armageddon.
Yep. And it's just... it's so interesting that at a conference like this, I mean, we have like Carl Gallup's Advancing the Kingdom of Jesus for such a time as this. Right. Zev Parat, Threshold, The Final Dress Rehearsal. And then there's your topic, and then Irwin's is America's God-Given Destiny. Which I'm really looking forward to that. Mm-hmm. Michael Boldea, The Prophetic Times, The Age of Fulfillment. I mean, it goes on and on. And let's not forget, on Saturday, Sharon Gilbert, your lovely wife, is the keynote speaker at the Speakers Luncheon. And just like you, I'm not even going to try to say what her
well, Sharon is Panoplia. Her title.
Panoplia. Okay.
Yeah, her talk is called Panoplia: The Best Designer Suit You'll Ever Wear, Explaining the Armor of Ephesians. And I will touch on this in my talk, the full armor of God from Ephesians chapter 6. But she's going to delve deeper into it. I'm going to look at it from a historical standpoint, which is kind of my bailiwick. But she dives into the original languages, the Greek, and from her perspective as well, she's just really insightful. She sees the whole picture better than I do. I'm good at digging out pieces, but she's good at seeing how the whole fits together. And that's really her layer of expertise and the kind of insight that she brings to her fiction. And so, yeah, I'm really, really proud of her and just delighted that you invited her to be the keynote speaker for the luncheon with the speakers.
Yeah, I'm excited. Michael Lake's going to be, his topic is the mystery of the two staves of authority. We already mentioned Stephen. Russ Dizdar, what else? When supernatural powers collide. L.A. Marzulli is bringing something completely new this time.
Yeah.
And he is going to talk about the mysterious mound builders because he lives out there now, and he's doing a film on that and really get into it. And then, of course, on Sunday, we have the baptisms. And that, folks, is something you truly do want to avail yourself of if you have the opportunity to do it. It's such a wonderful experience for everybody. It is, Derek, my favorite part of the whole conference. So,
it is amazing.
We're excited. We are excited. And you mentioned earlier, we have Long Island, New York coming up. in May, and that's at the very end of May. Now, that is different. That is not a conference, so to speak, folks. What that is it is an intense spiritual workshop. I want to get it completely correct here. It's in on Long Island. We were there last year. If I just get my computer to click for me here while I'm trying to talk. May 31st through June 2nd. That is a spiritual warfare training workshop. It is run by Russ and Shelley Dizdar and Tom Dunn and Coach Dave. And I think Russ is bringing a couple other people with him. It is designed to really teach you and train you on how to face the spiritual warfare that we all face on an ongoing basis. And as part of it, you get Russ's instructional workbook, so you can actually use his workbook as you go through. If it's not a little workbook, it's like a big notebook. And then you get access to advanced training after the conference via MP3 files. So it's a little different. It's something that we're really looking forward to. And then, of course, in when is it? Late August or early September, we will be up there with Defender Publishing, helping out on your conference up there, which we're really looking forward to doing.
First weekend in August.
It's an exciting year, and it's not over yet.
Yeah, first weekend in August.
It's not over yet because it's the first weekend in August. And then we're going to wrap the year up this year by going to none other than California. And we're going to put a conference on in California. And I know you and Sharon can't make that one. I wish you could, but we'll get you at the next one in California.
Yeah, we had committed to another conference the weekend before, and that was just a lot of travel back to back. But Los Angeles area is definitely a place where a conference and this type of message is needed because it is such an influencer on the culture, not just of the United States, but around the world, because the entertainment industry, the film industry, so much of the music industry is headquartered there. And so, we are definitely looking forward to talking about that and helping you get the word out about that conference in Los Angeles. For people interested in the Hear the Watchmen conference coming up in Dallas, where do they go to get their tickets and to sign up for the streaming video?
Really easy. You just go to www.hearthewatchman.com. You will see a graphic up there when you get to the home page that just simply says sounding the alarm. Click on that graphic. That'll take you to another page that just shows you all the speakers and all that, and it has different buttons that you can push to get your tickets, get the group rate hotel. I don't really think there's any group rate hotels left. But you can always try it, and you can see the on-demand streaming tickets, which you do want to avail yourself of that option like before the 15th of the month, if you can, because the price of the streaming goes from $49 to $59 on the 15th of the month. So get in there, get busy now. And we'll get something going with you.
And again, use the promo code Gilbert20, Gilbert20, and that'll save you $20 off the tickets if you can still make it to the conference. If you to sign up for streaming video, that'll save you 20% off the $49 rate, which again goes up to $59 after March 15th, which is this Friday. So get on this real quick. Mike Kerr, we will look forward to seeing you and Jeannie down there in Dallas in just a couple of weeks. It's coming up quick this year, going by faster than we thought already. There must be something. We'll have to get Josh Peck to explain this multiversity thing where time moves faster the older we get. But we're looking forward to getting there very quickly.
Because it definitely is.
Yes, amen to that.
It definitely is. Well, we are looking forward to seeing both you and Sharon there and spending time together, as with all the other speakers. So come on out, folks, meet all of us in person, spend some time with us, get to know us, become a part of the family.
HearTheWatchmen.com, Mike Kerr, and as you detected there, full disclosure, we recorded this a few days ago so that we could play it back and Mike wouldn't have to be with us on Sunday evening. So, yes, the early bird discount for the streaming video did expire on Friday, but you can still get 20% off by using the promo code Gilbert20. If you can't be with us in Dallas for the conference, join us virtually. It's not real-time video. It doesn't stream live, but it streams within about an hour or so after the end of each presentation. They're recorded, they're uploaded to the web, and then streamed from the web, not from the hotel, which means we don't have to depend on enough bandwidth from the hotel Wi-Fi to carry a high-definition video stream. So you get a much better guarantee, no interruption of the video stream that way. So hearthewatchmen.com, and we're looking forward to getting down to Dallas for that. Got another new conference that we'll tell you about that we just agreed to yesterday here in just a couple of minutes. But a couple of stories I wanted to get to before we hit 9 o'clock Central Time here. The coyotes are beginning to howl outside. As we talked about transhumanism tonight with Robert Blaise, producer of Human Weeds, humanweeds.com, the film. And by the way, I have added links in the show notes at vftb.net. So if you're listening in the archives, I encourage you to go to the show notes at vftb.net and hear the interviews that I did back in 2015, so about 4 years ago now, with transhumanists Zoltan Istvan. Did 2 interviews with him, one about his book, The Transhumanist Wager, one about religion and artificial intelligence, one with Reverend Dr. Christopher Bennick, who's a Presbyterian minister and one of the original members of the Christian Transhumanist Association, and then Lincoln Cannon, who, from the Mormon Transhumanist Association. So different perspectives from all sides, 2 theists, 1 atheist, and 4 interviews altogether. And then there's also a link to the interview with Mark Musser, the author of Nazi Oaks, the book about the environmental concerns of Hitler and the Nazis and how it relates to, eugenics. And you'll find all of those in the show notes for tonight's program at vftb.net. Now, speaking of transhumanism and this idea that we will somehow merge human intelligence or cognition with artificial intelligence, there's a researcher who is warning that we are already being controlled by algorithms and artificial intelligence. We don't have to wait for the Terminator or the Cylons or the Cybermen or the Borg to come and take us over. We are already allowing our lives to be controlled by artificial intelligence and algorithms. Dionysios Dimitis wrote an essay for a publication called The Conversation, and he quotes, or he's a professor at Systems Studies, the Center for Systems Studies at Hull University in Yorkshire. That's in England. And he wrote that our exploration led us to the conclusion that over time, the roles of information technology and humans have been reversed. In the past, we humans used technology as a tool. Now, technology has advanced to the point where it is using and even controlling us. He's published academic papers in peer-reviewed journals about this in the past. Last year, in the Journal of the Association for Information Systems, he wrote that we have progressively restricted our own decision-making capacity and allowed algorithms to take over. We see this taking place on Wall Street already. People running the trading system had come to see human decisions as an obstacle to market efficiency. He wrote, lawyers are being replaced now by artificial intelligences. They can scan other decisions for precedent much quicker than human researchers can. And so we are coming to even employment recruiters becoming dependent on third-party algorithms and artificial intelligence tools to weed out job candidates. We are turning our lives over to AI and algorithms, and we haven't even created the Terminator yet. This is backed up by a new study from Cardiff University in Wales. It shows that robots guided by AI are developing prejudice and discrimination tendencies, similar to the way we humans do, without being programmed to do so. Robots and machines using AI are capable of generating prejudice on their own. What a world. And finally, here in Missouri, our home state, a legislator trying to make a point, has introduced a bill into the legislature that would require every resident between the ages of 18 and 34 to own a rifle based on the Armalite Incorporated AR-15 platform. It's being reported by Fox 4 in Kansas City. It's called the McDaniel Militia Act. presented by Missouri State Representative Andrew McDaniel. And he argues that it points out the absurdity of the opposite side, those who want to restrict the rights to own a gun. It's the same sort of thing as the state representative in Georgia who wants to essentially require men to license their testicles to make a point. Well, it's not much chance this bill is going to pass, but if it does, I'm going to talk to a lawyer about suing for ageism. Or at least, since I'm over 35, maybe some, state aid or something to help me buy one. Just to make a point. I'm kidding, of course. I'm happy with our shotgun, which we own only to keep the coyotes at bay. Hey, a new conference. Sharon and I just agreed to speak again this year at the Sons of God Giants of Old Conference in Lubbock, Texas. That's August 16th through 18th. Our good friend Dr. Judd Burton and Pastor Dan Crestman heading that up. We'll have more details for you in the weeks and months ahead. More conferences on the schedule. You'll find all of those linked at vftb.net. Leave us a review on Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or wherever else you find us, which, of course, is wherever fine podcasts are sold. And give our page a like at Facebook. A View from the Bunker is a production of Gilbert House, released under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Our opening theme is Iron Bacon by Kevin MacLeod. His website is incapitech.com. Our announcer is DC Good. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. See you next Sunday night. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is A View from the Bunker.